So look, thank you very much for asking me, Dairy Australia, to speak again. I did deliver this, as Bernie said, in May, and we're just topping up on it for a good sound, hopefully. So I've added in a little bit extra if you have been on the very first one, and certainly for anybody who was on the 6-part series of Employer of Choice, there's a lot that you can, I will refer to it in places just so that for people who have been on that course or who are looking at the recordings, you can slot in the information from this as well into that. So look, I'm just going to crack on with this. There's a bit to cover, and we're under time pressure with a time management course, so it's always good to get finished on time. Look, so I'm going to start off and look at it with some around time considerations, because we tend to say, oh, I need to be better at managing time, but we don't really think through that. We don't really understand what's maybe holding us back from being good at time management. So it's useful to consider how you think about time and becoming self-aware. So I specialize in leadership, and we would always start with yourself first. So what is it about you that maybe is preventing you from being time effective? What is it? How do you think about time? What's your relationship with time? We're going to look a little bit at that. I would say that, you know, every slide we're looking at here, there's a considerable amount of information available. Time management is a learnable skill set, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there are plenty and plenty of resources out there for you to top up on this topic and this concept. We're going to look at why you would develop effective time management. So what's the reasoning behind it? And then we're going to look at 2 specific tools. We're going to look at a macro concept of time, which is long vision, you know, looking out across the year, maybe talking about goal setting. And then we're going to come back into what you can do on a daily basis. So really, I would say that today I'm going to give you some hints and tips, but this is an ongoing journey, and some pointers here of how you would go about getting better at this. So why do we look at time management? Well, you know what? The world of business works on the axiom of time is money. And of course, for ourselves, the older we get, the more that's going on, the more we realize time is such a valuable asset. So I would say it's one of the topics that I'm asked to speak about most. So looking at, I have been sending out fact sheets with any of the talks that I've done for Dairy Australia. So there will be something here just to complement what I'm speaking about today that you can return to and look at. So considering time, well, look, we've got some interesting perceptions about time. There's a perception that time is universal, so that we all place the same value on time. We do not. We place a different value on time. Some people cherish their work time. Some people cherish their downtime. Some people cherish their family time. Other people, you know, one of the things I would see as an employer good employers value their employees' time. Just because it's not their time, it's the employee's time, they still value it. Whereas I would often hear, oh, that person's not committed. They don't want to stay here as long as I do. They're not committed to my business. They're out the gate as quickly as they can, as if the person who's working for you should place the same value on their time in your business as you do. Now, you can earn that right, but you certainly shouldn't expect it day one. You have to work to get somebody to be as committed to your business in terms of time as you are. The agricultural work ethic is a really interesting one. So the work ethic is brilliant, but we've got a little bit confused about work ethic versus work practices. So the work ethic is the ability to apply yourself and to work hard, and it's discussed a little bit better on the fact sheet. But work practices, I suppose the work ethic, we talk about an agricultural work ethic is working long hours. But we shouldn't ask how long you worked, you should ask what you got done. So work ethic should be about your focus and your application and not the hours you worked, because you could find out that you're actually quite inefficient in terms of productivity because you're working long hours, but they're not effective hours. And I was speaking recently on an agricultural talk in Ireland, and my colleague was presenting some information, and she just said that actually Irish dairy farmers were reporting a 12-hour day, but when they drilled into the numbers, they were doing something different for 3 hours, which means that's a 9-hour working day. So the 12-hour looks big, but it wasn't truly a 12-hour day. And so there's a lot of kickback when you say you need to have a work day that's equivalent to other workplaces. And farmers will say, no, we need to be working 12 hours. We need to be working 10, 11, 12 hours. I know this is different in Australia because you've got much stronger employment laws, but it is something to be mindful. Don't wear the long hours badge of honor, wear the effective productivity badge of honor rather than the long hours, because nowadays it's not big and it's not clever to work long hours. It stops people wanting to work for you. It stops your family wanting to go into farming because they perceive that they could earn a lot more money elsewhere with less effort. So it's really being mindful that the agricultural work ethic, we need to keep it, i.e. the focus, the application, the ability to stick at jobs. However, we need to really challenge our work practices. And that comes down to being to busyness versus productivity. So somebody will say they're very busy, and when you look at them, they, and yet feel guilty at the end of the day. And it's because when they sit down and think about it, though they felt busy all day and under pressure, they didn't actually achieve anything. So we have that guilt coming in. And that's a big thing. I would see that a lot in farmers. One of the most common questions I'm asked: how do I prevent the guilt of not working? How do I feel guilty about not getting enough done on a daily basis? So we need to look at ourselves and ask, well, are we being productive? Now, critically, I should have an extra word in there. I should say effective productivity, because we could be doing lots, but not doing the right thing. So effective productivity, you could also be highly efficient at doing the wrong thing. So we need to think about effective productivity, effective efficiency. And that means it is genuinely contributing to our workday. It is genuinely contributing to our business. It is genuinely contributing to what we're trying to achieve in life. And with that, in terms, I mentioned they're feeling guilty because you didn't get enough done on a day. What we find with people is that on a short-term basis, they're too ambitious. So we expect to get too much done on a daily basis. And then we feel guilty when we don't get it done, or we feel lazy or unproductive. And, it brings your mood down a bit when you feel you hadn't a good day. But long-term, we're not ambitious enough. So across a year, maybe across 5 years, across 10 years, we don't achieve what we could have achieved if we had been more productive on a daily basis. So we need to be kinder to ourselves on a daily basis. So we talk about compassion, self-compassion in psychology. You need to be kinder to yourself on a daily basis, but a little bit harder on yourself across time. So it's thinking about getting things done and having that, looking back and saying, yeah, I achieved what I want to achieve. Now, working with clients, I find when we really drill into time management and productivity, you turn around and you start getting your 5-year plan is completed in 3, your 10-year plan is completed in 6, because of that being effective on a daily basis. And we look at that a bit more, because that is about your why. Why are you doing this? When you're very clear about your why, it's much easier. So, excuse me, the fact of time, so we talked about the perception, but the facts are that it's a finite resource, and we all have the same unit of time. So we've got our 60 minutes and an hour, 60 seconds, 60 minutes, an hour, 24 hours in a day, a week. We all have the same amount of time, and it's a finite resource. And once it's spent, it's spent. So it's finite. Once it's spent, it's spent, it's gone. So we need to think about, are we using it effectively? Because you cannot get that time back. And we need to really, when you appreciate that, you stop wasting time quite nicely. Opportunity cost, it is an opportunity cost. Look, much of the principles that you apply to money, you can apply to time. So it is an opportunity cost. If I'm spending time here speaking to you today, what am I not doing? I would say that I'm not sleeping in bed, which would be something I enjoy. So, it's thinking about the opportunity cost. If I'm spending my time doing this, what am I not doing? And you need to get and that's the true value of time, because if you understand, value is about understanding what you're missing out on as well as what you're getting. So it's understanding, what am I missing out on by doing this? Parkinson's law, it's from the 1950s. It's a very well-known concept. The task expands to fit the time available. And what that really says about the human brain is, if you do not give a target, if you do not put finite, if we look at lean management, you would have a definite start and a definite finish, and the brain will track to that. So we need we put barriers in place, and that's where the discounted calendar that I'm going to discuss came about. The idea of putting barriers in place so that your brain can track to that finish line, and that you're using the time available to you rather than working till the job is done. And unfortunately and this certainly hurts farmers who seem to do a lot of multitasking. Multitasking is highly inefficient. So we need, because the brain doesn't like it, it comes back to this idea of having something finite. You need to have a start and a finish for your brain to track to that. And having lots of things open, lots of it's like if you're working on a computer, be having lots of files open. If you're working on the farm, it's having lots of jobs unfinished. When you've lots of jobs or tasks unfinished, you do not feel satisfied. You feel incredibly satisfied. And if you're reflecting on your own experience, there's nothing like feeling, I've finished that, that's done. So I know that many of you are in harvest at the moment. There's that satisfaction, and that's a very efficient time, because you're doing that is allotted to that time. It takes a certain amount of time to get done, and it's done. So that's highly efficient, and you feel satisfied because you've got the start, the finish, and you can see that it's been completed. So multitasking, we discussed that a little bit with the discounted calendar. Looking at this in practice, so sorry, I'm just going to move my thumbnails here so I can see what I'm speaking about. In practice, what we should be doing, so I've talked about what we perceive, we need to review and think about ourselves that way. And then I'm talking about the fact of time, and then in practice, this is what we should be doing. So the very famous Pareto principle, many of you will know it as the 80-20 rule. Pareto was an Italian economist in the 1920s who said that 80% of the world's wealth belongs to 20% of the population, but actually we can use that principle a lot. So what we should be doing is, you know, if you're a business, 80% of your revenue will come from 20% of your clients, for example. If you're a large organization, 80% of your issues in-house will be caused by 20% of your employees. 80% of your productivity can be attributable to 20% of your employees because you've got management systems that mean that some people are more significant than others because they've got teams, etc. You rarely, and the interesting thing about it when I'm in an organization is that the 20% that are most productive and the 20% that are most troublesome, they never overlap. One person is never in both of those percentages. So we need to be very careful about where we're applying our time. So if we would look at farming, you need to think, what are the jobs that give me 80% of my revenue? And of course, that's milking. So it's milking, it's protecting that time. It's doing it really well, really efficiently, and really promoting that concept. So then you start looking at your cow quality, etc., your feed that you're putting into the cow to make sure that your milking is right, and not wasting your time on jobs that really don't contribute. So we need to put our energy into any task. Ask yourself on a number of tasks that are in front of you, what is going to contribute? What's going to give me an 80% return versus investing a lot of time in something that doesn't really contribute overall? So the Pareto principle is a really valuable way to think about weighting a task. You should weight your tasks. What's the best and most important thing I can do today that would contribute towards my long-term goal? Prioritization, I will look at that at the one of the last slides. So that's urgent versus important. Your ability to say no is strongly dependent on understanding what your yes is. So if you know what you're protecting, it's easy to say, if you know what you're protecting, which is your yes, it's easy to say no. So saying no to working long hours because you're saying yes to going to your children's footy match, saying no to being a slave to the farm because you're saying yes to your quality of life. So it's really about the easier you find it, and this comes back to, if we were looking at the employment series that I did across the summer, this comes back to accountability. If you know what you're protecting, if you understand what you're protecting, it's easy to hold people accountable. So it's really that understanding what you are protecting, which is your yes, makes it much easier for you to say, no, that's not acceptable behavior, or no, that's not how I want to spend my time. I have a better way to spend my time. And then a lot of it comes down to personal capacity. So understanding where you are in terms of stress management, in terms of your own life stages, in terms of the business stages, where and what are your skill set and how good are you at managing yourself. I would say in relation to personal capacity, you can break anybody. So from a resilience point of view, you need to be mindful that there's only so much energy you can give to any task. There's only so much energy that you can apply across a year, across 5 years. You need to understand where you currently are and to use your energy to the best capacity. We would certainly say personal capacity, looking at your energy levels across the day, are you wasting your best and most productive time doing something that doesn't contribute to your business? So for all of you making phone calls or answering emails, you should be doing the tasks that aren't that need to be done, but that aren't taxing. You should be using the downtime in your day. And typically in a human circadian rhythm, so how our sleep-wake cycles, that's usually after lunch, fed and watered, time for a snooze. That's a good time to do work that needs to be done, but isn't too taxing, isn't too mentally taxing. So it's understanding your personal capacity, what are your peaks and flows of energy, and using that efficiently. And one of the things I would certainly see in Ireland, that it comes from a response to weather. Personal capacity would be, well, it's sunny today, so make hay while the sun shines. I kill myself today, I'll work a ridiculously long day, and not think about the consequence of that energy burn up on the following weeks, following days. So I end up having a peak on the Monday, but ruining my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, rather than thinking about going for high averages. So personal capacity is very important, and so that's self-awareness idea. When we look at trying to get anything to stick, so just moving on from that, looking at this idea of time management. So of course, when I do a workshop, people always say, look, it's all well and good, and you're telling me this now, and I buy into it here, but the minute I go out the door, something's going to happen and I forget it. Well, the easiest way for a behavior change to stick, the easiest way for you to embed good practice is to understand why you're doing it. And I would consistently come back to this idea of starting with why, which is a Simon Sinek idea. There's a book about it. If you understand why, it's much easier to get out of bed in the morning. So if you understand what you're trying to achieve, it gives you resolve when you know there's distractions, when people are trying to pull you in a different direction, when different things are going on, you're able to say, no, I know what my yeses are, my why, and I'm not going to be distracted by other things because I've applied myself to that. If you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, it makes it a lot more difficult to stick with it. So this is a really important idea, that you understand what your why is. And when we look at time management, it could be some of these things, okay? So again, I appreciate I'm giving you a lot of information in one go, but looking at this idea of why you might do time management. So some of you will have seen me doing the golden circle before with the employment, why you would employ, for example. From an effective time management, just looking at yourself, great place to start. You know, when we look at resilience, you need to look after yourself. You are the key stakeholder in your business. You need to be looking after yourself. What do we know about time? And this is just some, this is not an exhaustive list. Positive self-concept, I mentioned it earlier. When you finish, when you use your time efficiently, when you get through a task, you feel good about yourself. You feel like you've achieved. You don't feel guilty. You don't feel, oh, I'm useless, I'm no good, I'm a waste of time, I didn't get anything done. Stress management, resilience. As a psychologist, I work a lot on this. I'm also a sports psychologist, so we look at performance and high performance, or elite performance. When we look at it, if I was looking at somebody who's under pressure or in trouble, or a business that's in trouble, one of the first things we would tackle is time management. So looking at time management feeds directly into stress management, and of course, common to all people who are stressed, no matter what country you're in or what or organization or industry you're in, people when they're stressed will say, I don't have time. So it's a common denominator across people who are stressed, regardless of what they're stressed about. I don't have time. So we use effective time management to alleviate personal stress, and then that sense of achievement. So feeling good about yourself, that achievement feeds straight back. Achieving, you can handle a lot of stress if you feel like you're achieving something. You know, you can take a lot of hardship if you can see there's an outcome and there's something productive at the end of it. So they feed very much into each other, positive self-concept, stress management, and achievement. Of course, when we're looking at others, you know, managing people's time, being respectful, it's just huge, isn't it? You know, you feel so put out and so frustrated when somebody wastes your time. So it's being mindful that when you manage time effectively, you are showing respect to the other person. You are respecting them, and that's really important from an employment point of view, that when somebody comes into work in your business, that you have your work set out for them, that they're not wasting their time, they're not hanging around looking for things to do, but you've consciously made the effort to assign tasks to them so they're using their time efficiently. By using their time efficiently, they can get a sense of achievement. By getting a sense of achievement, they have a positive self-concept, so you're feeding straight back up into self for the other person. Their positive self-concept, they go out your farm gate going, I love working there, I feel good about myself, I achieve a lot, and that word spreads and other people start wanting to work for you. And there's a success, that you get this sense of success. We also use time as a very strong communication method, so I'll speak later about urgent and important. So communicating, you know, if somebody doesn't do a task, ask yourself, are you being very tight on your language when it comes to time? I'd like you to do that later, and the job doesn't get done. I need you to have that done by 4 o'clock is a totally different conversation. So we need to be very clear about our language and how we are communicating in terms of time. And then, of course, for your business, we know that it makes financial sense to use your time effectively. Productivity, getting things done. Your reputation, of course, if you're coming straight back up to the others and the self, if you're achieving, if you're known as a business that's successful because you get through a lot, well then, you know, your reputation becomes very, very powerful, and that alone attracts people into your business. And it's also sustainable. So if you're misspending time, if you're misusing your time, that is not a sustainable model of productivity in the business, and your business suffers. And if your business is suffering a lot, then it's not sustainable. Plus, you know, if we look at dairy, it's not sustainable maybe in your family because you're not working efficiently. Your children don't want to go into farming, so you're doing your business isn't sustainable within your family name because you have set up a model that is not attractive to others. So really, I would encourage everybody to tease out what it is that makes them want to be better at time management. I want to go to the football matches without feeling guilty. I want to go on holidays without worrying about what's happening behind me. I want to be finished at a certain time every day and to come in and feel good about myself, not to feel guilty or to feel I haven't achieved anything. You know, getting through all of those things and keeping those, think of it as the lighthouse that guides you through murky and rocky waters. So the murky and rocky waters are all the things that go on that are out of your control. They're all of the distractions. But if you have a guiding light, it helps you to navigate those murky waters. So it's really important that you sit down and you evaluate why it is you would like to do effective time management. I did a talk about this last week. It was a webinar, 2.5 hours, and we really were only discussing why you would bother with time management, to get people really engaged in that idea so that they can reflect and take it away in a way that is meaningful to them, so that there's an opportunity to change behavior. Just before I move on, we're looking at so that was a why. So that was that bullseye. Hopefully this goes back up for me. That's a bullseye. We've looked at the why. I can very easily answer this middle one, the how, the strategy, because the strategy within here. So hopefully you can see my cursor. This is the strategy, the how. Well, what's your how? Your how is going to be effective time management. So we're answering the how today. That's your strategy. Your strategy is effective time management. Why? For all of the reasons I mentioned, because you want to feel good about yourself, you want sustainable business, you want to attract others into your business. And then we're now going to look at what. So I'm kind of filling in that golden circle for you. And we're going to look at what. We're going to look at two tactics. We're going to look at macro time management, which is the discounted planner idea. And then we're going to look at task prioritization, which is a micro concept. It's a daily basis. It's a here and now rather than long term. So let me just pass through that. Very simply, just on the discounted planner, why do we use the discounted planner? Well, farmers tend to look on a daily basis because traditionally farmers have been reactive, totally understandable. We're reacting to weather, we're reacting to animals, but actually, you know, within reason, weather is, okay, I will say this more for Ireland, I suppose, rather than put my foot in the mouth in terms of Australian weather, which I'm not as knowledgeable about, but within reason. So I don't hear this anymore, by the way. I've been working heavily. I've been stuck in the Irish industry for 6-7 years now, and I've stopped hearing this. So I get a lot of, oh, well, we work with animals and we work with weather, so it's all unpredictable. I've stopped. I'm no longer hearing that. That kind of talk has come out of the industry, which is great, because realistically, you know, if you're talking about a finishing time every day, I'd say you should be finishing at a certain time every day. And somebody used to pipe up, oh, well, we work with animals. And the answer is, well, if every single day at 5 o'clock your animals decide to be disruptive, there's something systematically wrong with your business and you shouldn't be hiring people in the first place. Weather is predictable within reason. So we still have seasons. We still have quite strong definition of seasons in Ireland. We would certainly have our silaging, our harvesting window is always within 2 weeks of a certain date in any area of the country. So there's a lot of predictability. We bring our cows in at a certain, you know, a week either side of, bring our cattle in a week either side of a certain date in the calendar. So there is quite a lot of predictability. And to say that the weather and everything else is unpredictable actually is an excuse, and it's not productive. So we need to move away from that. And part of moving away from being reactive actually not part, entirely moving away from reactive is being proactive. So it's predicting what will happen. And I heard this quite a well-known psychologist, Canadian psychologist, Daniel Levitin, speaking on a TED Talk the other day, and he talked about rather than doing a post-mortem, so working out what happened after the fact, doing a pre-mortem, and that's contingency planning. So it's deciding what do you do, what can you get done in advance, and protecting that so that you do it properly. And that's the point of the discounted planner. So what you need to do, the discounted planner, is you need a 12-month wall planner. It's important it's a wall planner because it needs to be a visual aid. We're using this as a visual aid, a communication tool. And it's on the wall. People can talk to it. They can talk about it. They can refer to it. You can use it as a communication tool, standing around looking at it. We need family input because we need to understand the opportunity cost of time. And by having actually family input and family saying, well, we want to go on holidays at this time, or I want to achieve this. And family input, you know, if you don't have a family and there aren't other significant members related to you, for example, working, it's maybe looking at your diary of events. You know, what do you enjoy doing? What is it that you want to be able to do on a yearly basis? What are you trying to achieve? we put those into the calendar so that we're putting natural blockages into the calendar that help us to focus our time and energy. Colors and stickers, really, really valuable, because the more attractive, the more interesting. And I talk about interesting, I'm not talking about indigestion. I'm not talking about complicated. I'm talking about something that is visually attractive in a way that I can visualize it when I walk out of the office and go, oh yeah, that's where I should be, or that's what I should be doing at this time, because that's what the calendar says. So colors and stickers are really valuable. If you're colorblind, and this has come up as something, and I've come across staff members who are colorblind in businesses, you know, how do you get around that? Well, that's a whole conversation in itself, because colorblind in a business might affect other aspects of business and what they're trying to achieve. And you use your diary of events and you put those into the calendar to help you discount time. And of course, and then after that, we do staff input. Now, it's really important from a business perspective that you look after your own time first. So as the business owner, as a key operator, as the unit manager, you are the most significant person in your business. With the risk, you're entitled to some of the perks. So that's why it's not disingenuous. It's not mean to put staff at the bottom. It is really, look, if I put staff first, and I go home and say, well, we can't go on holidays then because my staff are going on holidays then, well, what's the conversation like at home? It's pretty chilly, I think is the word. So it's about understanding that you put yourself and your family and what you're trying to achieve first, so that you're giving a lot of clarity and that you're getting a perk of the business, which you take all the risk for. So looking at wall planners, well, very simply, I've got two examples here. This is an interesting one when we look at time. So people even see time differently. So traditionally, I have always used this one. This is how my head would see time. And I was doing a course where planners were being sponsored, and they arrived in this format, which is the horizontal planner. And my head just panicked because I couldn't see time horizontally. Now, my husband looked and he said, God, if I had a choice, I'd take the horizontal planner. So what I tend to do if I'm doing a workshop with the planners is I bring both, and I say to people, the one that you like, so the one that you prefer, keep, and then just practice on the other one. But it is something to be mindful of, that people actually see time differently. So that in itself is a communication point. And, you know, going to your staff and saying, which do you prefer? And they're saying, you know, everybody says I prefer the vertical planner, and one person says I prefer the horizontal planner. Well, then you know that the person with the horizontal planner preference thinks differently to the rest of you. Doesn't think wrong, doesn't think incorrectly, just thinks differently. And that can be a conversation, and you can think about how you're going to get around that issue. So it's really valuable to think about time as a picture, because time, even though time is a finite concept, to talk about time in terms, you know, next week, that's quite difficult to visualize, you know, especially when you're talking to children, you know, our staff who haven't been in your business. So if I'm new to dairy and I've never seen a dairy year, and you say, oh, look, I know calving is hectic, but it'll be over soon. And I can't picture what soon looks like because I've never been in a calving, I've never spent day and night calving. Well, being able to present that in terms of a picture, I can get my head around it. And while I feel miserable because I'm tired and I'm exhausted and you know, it's tough work and I haven't got a chance to recover properly, I can see an end. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So being able to visualize and create a picture of time is really valuable, particularly for people who have never been in the system before, particularly for newcomers. And this isn't just about people who have no dairy experience. You know, if I have dairy experience, but I do it my way in my farm, it's going to be different to your farm. So creating that picture is really, really valuable. So that's just a little bit thing. The first thing we do, and you know, this is a tricky one, because farmers, when I presented this first, I started off initially saying, what do you know about farming? And farmers started filling in everything they knew, and then they looked at the calendar and said, oh gosh, I can't go on holidays, there's too much to be done. So we had to reverse it and say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is discount the time not available to farming. So take your time that you don't want to be farming out of that calendar first. And as you can see there, there's 3 different things going on here. I've got non-negotiable or protected time off. So come hell or high water, that's my time off. Nobody interferes with that. That's my yes. I am protecting that. No, and I'm going to say no to everything else that interferes with that. Now, if I'm protecting that, I need to make sure that I have somebody in place when I'm away that will run my business, allowing me to have guilt-free time off the farm. So it's very important that we know that in advance, because if you want the right person in place, you're unlikely to be able to get them the day before. You have to plan to have the person in place. So that's my non-negotiable protected time off. Now, farmers, business people, especially you see in farming when it's a tight market, it's a slightly easier market at the moment because other industries are suffering. So there is a lack of employment. So it is an employer's market at the moment. Staff always often, business owners often go, no, I give it to my staff first because I want, that's the good thing to do. That's the good employer thing to do. If you want to be the good employer, put some negotiable time into your calendar. So I've got there, and it's in the horizontal lines. It says negotiable. Apologies for my writing. I just see how bad it is there. Negotiable with staff time off. So there's time there that I would like to have off, but it's not a burning desire for me to have it off. It's not essential. And that's something I can negotiate with my staff. So that's me showing willing with my staff, but I've still protected my own time because I am the business owner or the unit manager, and I am protecting something for myself. I'm having some of the perks of a business for which I take all the risk. And then we've got that, I've got something else there that's diagonal stripe there is the skeleton or bare essentials. So, it's maybe saying to yourself, we'll have downtime across Christmas. We'll have downtime across a certain month, which is traditionally quite quiet for us. We'll allow ourselves to take holidays then. It could be saying, if I can make, we would certainly see a lot of businesses trying to conform to the working world, which would be having very little work at the weekend. Now, if you want to have a skeleton shift at the weekend or bare essentials at the weekend, you have to be very clear about how you're managing your business during the week. You have to have your business very organized during the week to allow that bare essentials to happen at the weekend. You can't just swan along and say, oh, we'll take an easy weekend. You have to plan for any change of time. And we all know that we say to ourselves, well, if all goes well, I'll take a day off next week. If you do not plan it, it will not happen. And there's many statements around time, and one of them is failing to plan is planning to fail. So we need to really plan and put things in place. And what I've done there is I've created focus. So you are creating focus in your calendar. If I have all day to do the job, I will take all day. If I have all month to do the job, I will take all month. If I've only got till next Friday because I'm going on holidays, it only takes me till next Friday because I'm going on holidays. So we know, I think one of the best statements I've ever heard in relation to time was an Irish farmer saying, it's amazing how you can get a day's work done in the last half an hour before afternoon milking. And what that person is really saying is that definite finish time allows you to push on and to focus. So knowing that, we put a lot of barriers in place to give our heads something to track to give our heads focus. Moving along, this is the easy one for all of you. You put in everything you know. Now look at this scale, this looks a little bit over, when I put it all together, it looks overwhelming. This is going to be a much bigger thing on your wall. You're going to have a big one. I've heard of people who have painted, who paint this onto their wall and then just change it every year. So, it is really, really valuable and a useful way to think about time. And why not have a permanent one in your office that you just change each year in terms of when the days are. So we look at this and we put in absolutely every single thing we know about a farming year. We know a huge amount. Now, what you see here is not what's happening on a daily basis. Like I've got no milking or feeding in there. I just have things that will happen in addition to your daily routine. So there's quite a lot on. When we think about all of the things that's going on, plus our daily routine, time gets consumed very, very quickly on farms. So we must be very mindful of that and not allow it to slip away. When the time is available, we must use that productively. So on our quieter months, we need to be more productive and not say, oh, we'll take the foot off the gas now, this is really nice, because that's working in peaks and troughs. We want to have a high average across the year. You're in your quieter months, you are loading your quieter months in order to be able to be productive in your stressed months. So look, this is my first draft before staff are added. There's a conversation. I'm saying to them, look, I've got calving on there. You can't go on holidays then. I'm off that weekend, but you have a look around and see where you can do where you can have your holidays. That's done at the beginning of the year. It's not done the day before or the week before. You're planning that at the beginning of the year. Every other business and every other industry is planning this at the beginning of the year because you shouldn't be putting your business at risk. You need to know when your staff are there and when they're not there, and you should be planning that in advance, and you should be holding to it. So if you offer somebody time off, you have to give it to them, even if it means you, your family, your neighbor, and your grandfather have to go working because you're allowing your staff to take the time that you have promised off. So it's important that you You sit down, that's where you have the conversation with your staff. So as you can see there at that scale, it's a bit heavy going, but you're going to do this at a bigger scale in a way that works for you. And then critically, I mentioned this just a moment ago, you need to relieve the stress periods in the coming months. So any time of year that you know is stressed, we're in the middle of harvest, there's a lot going on, you've got to do all your daily jobs that comes with being a dairy farmer, plus you've got harvest going on. You should have had everything ready in advance. You should have loaded the previous months in order to make that happen effectively, because that's a critical point in your business that needs a lot of focused attention to do it properly. It has a big outcome for your preceding month, your subsequent months. So you're saying to yourself, well, I'm going to be tight here. What can I do in advance to make that go as smoothly as possible? How can you're controlling for as many controllables as possible in the previous months of a stress period in order for that to happen. So one of the reasons I came up with this idea, somebody asked me to present at the Moore Park Open Day, which would be the big Teagasc, the big Irish Research Centre for Dairy. And one of the things that up to that point, and I would say it has dramatically changed, up to that point, what I used to always find amazing was finding farmers in the middle of block calving, so it would be typically spring block calving in Ireland, to find farmers almost surprised, going, oh my gosh, I'm calving, I don't have tags, or I don't have this and I don't have that. So something that they knew for 12 months was coming up, they hadn't prepared for it. And I always found it mind-boggling. And that's where this idea of let's not just talk about time, let's actually give something productive that will help people to review it and to work harder on this. And that's where the idea of the discounted calendar turned around. If you know you're going to have a stress period, knowledge is power, load your business, be prepared, be ready, and give yourself the best opportunity to perform productively during a time in your business that is stressful but critical. So we're talking about breeding, we're talking about milk, we're talking about calving, we're talking about harvest, all of those things that are adding onto your daily load. And one of the things that you would see, I would come across a lot, is maybe one of the things I would discuss with farmers is this, an empty rate. A high empty rate could be attributable to literally being tired. So we would see a lot of focus in block calving. People bring on extra staff during block calving, then they let them go after the block calving, and then not too shortly afterwards, you're going into breeding, the most significant part of the farming year, for obviously. And they've got less staff on, plus they've their core staff, and the core staff were also on during calving, which means they've got less staff, and the staff they have are already tired and exhausted from, because it's cumulative tiredness. And they're surprised that they have a high empty rate. And when you sit down and think about it and say, well, it's not really that surprising, because surely these are fatigued, exhausted people who are missing the subtle signals of heat detection. So it's really about understanding how you can give yourself the best opportunity, and understanding that if breeding is the most significant part, well, that's when you need to be freshest and at your best. So maybe that's when you load your calendar. Or even better, if you're looking at block system, saying to yourself, well, everybody's looking for staff during the calving season, during that block. I'm going to hire extra people on the off season to get as much done as possible in order to make that stress season, that stress time or stressed block, be as productive as possible. So looking at because I presented all of the ones I presented were vertical calendars, looking at the horizontal calendars, that might be something that's how it would come up or what it would look like. As you can see, there's a visual difference. And again, that difference is really valuable because it's a conversation starter. It's a communication point when you're looking at staff and people in your business. And then just to make sure that you are running your business highly effectively, we have, thank you, Bernie. Just looking at so you've taken your big picture, you know what the year looks like. Well, how do I guarantee, how do I protect what I've drawn onto my planner, what I've presented in terms of information for my staff, for myself? How do I protect that? Well, you make sure that on a daily basis, you're using that information on a daily basis to guide productivity, to guide effective productivity. So when you understand what the long-term picture is, what that why, I want to have a successful calving season. I want to have a successful, so we're moving into 2021. I want a successful 2021. How am I going to make it successful? I'm going to use that big long-term picture of the whole year of 2021 to help guide me on a daily basis. So what we have here is this quadrant. This is a very famous piece of time management. It's 4 quadrants based on 2 axes, importance and urgency. often called Eisenhower quadrants, because General Eisenhower, the American general, used this idea when he was triaging tasks to be done. So important, not urgent. This really is your why. Okay, now this happens on short term and long term. Your long term important, not urgent, is your lighthouse. This is what keeps you going. This is what you're working towards all the time. It is not going to happen today, so it's not urgent, but it's important that it happens. And these are the things that you want to achieve long term. You know, it's almost like being a little bit morbid. It's like your deathbed regrets. What would you regret not having achieved in your life? And that's what you would put in here. Now, it's important you date action these, because if you put them on, in Ireland, we'd say you put them on the long finger, which means you keep pushing them out and you keep pushing them out. You must put a date on it. But this is the run. If you want to run this model properly, you need to be very, very clear about what is important to you, but not urgent. What is you're trying to achieve long term? It could be an effective transition to the next generation, so succession planning. It could be expansion. It could be changing your herd profile. It could be the opportunity to make yourself obsolete from your business. So being able to remove yourself from the business and the business still thrives without you. So long-term setting up an opportunity for you to walk away guilt-free without the business collapsing behind you. So we're always working towards that. How do we do that? Well, here is what's happening today. We've got the important and urgent. So sorry, that's the quadrant of effectiveness. So we call it the quadrant of effectiveness because you feel good about yourself when you achieve that. We do that by running the other quadrants effectively. So important and urgent is what's happening on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, we have a whole pile of things to do. You need to prioritize that list. So say you've got 10 tasks that you would like to get done today. You would put a Pareto principle on it. So you would weight it in terms of what's the most important thing I have to do, what's going to contribute most to my long term, to this quadrant. And you're going to do, so one of the ways you could do it is you have a list of 10 and you prioritize this. What's the most important thing I can do today for my business? And you call that number one. And you wouldn't do what mere mortals do, which is go for the quick win or the easy job or the job you like. You would do the most important job, which is number one. Now, on any one day, you have to live with the fact you're unlikely to get past task 3, but you live with the knowledge that you've done the 3 most significant things that will contribute to your business. If we have a list of 10 and you're unlikely to get past task 3, those other 7 get reprioritized into important but not urgent. So they're not happening today, but they have to happen. And they're date actioned because you're going to swing. Things are going to be moving between here quite a lot. Okay, so you're using this. This is a dynamic model. It's not I write it in and that's it. Things are shifting all the time. And so we list in priority. Down here, I love this one. This is one of my favorite because I can tidy up a lot of a mess in any business or with any individual just looking at this quadrant. Not important, urgent. Things make themselves important by they're urgent, they're in your face, and they grab your attention. And because you give them your attention, you've now made them important. And by doing so, you have just jumped them up here. So you need to think about what it is that you're doing that is wasting your time. And the kind of things are phone calls. If you do not need to answer the phone, bin it. Don't do it at all. If you need to answer the phone, but not now, so I need to speak to Melva, but I just don't have time today, well, then it jumps up here. So it's important, not urgent. Kylie rings me, I've got to prioritize that. I want to speak to Kylie, but I need to understand that by answering Kylie's phone call, I have now made Kylie's phone call number 1 on my important urgent. And after the phone call, I will have to review my important urgent in case I have lost time and now have to change my order of priority. So that by taking that phone call, I may well not be able to finish a certain task that I was hoping to get done today. So it gets shifted over here. So we call this the quadrant of delusion because you're mistaking urgency for importance, and that will really happen when you're under pressure. Under pressure, you're cognitively impaired. You'll deal with what's in front of you. And if I'm a clever employee, I might make a lot of noise in front of you, so you give me attention first, and I'm actually not the right person to be giving attention to. Dairy farming, we'd say we feed the bawling calf first just to keep them quiet. And in the meantime, there's a sick calf that you should really be looking after in the corner, but they're quiet in the corner, so you're not paying them attention. And then down here is not important, not urgent, and these are just time wasters. These are the things that just sap energy, gossiping, speaking to people that have no contribution to your business, listening to people's opinion who really shouldn't have opinion, whose opinion you shouldn't value or take into consideration. So I always say to people, look, is this person going to hold your hand in the middle of the night when you can't sleep about this? And if they're not, then you shouldn't be distracted by their opinion. And it's very easy agricultural community, they're close-knit communities, you've got neighbours, what will they think, what might they think? You have got to be very clear about this important, not urgent, so that you don't get distracted by time wasters. And the example I always give, because it's such a stark example, as a young Irish guy working in the Scottish system said he hadn't watched television for 3 years because he believes that was the biggest time waster. So he tends to, socialise, local sports club, reads books about what he's trying to achieve because he's ambitious in terms of his importance, not urgent. What he's trying to achieve long term, he's ambitious about. So he's not going to waste time watching television as far as he's concerned. The next person is going to say, I need television to wind down. I need to binge on my Netflix series because I need my head to wind down from what I've been thinking about during the day. Just be mindful of how you are interpreting things as urgent and important, and being very good. Look, the reason people ring you is because you answer the phone. Fundamentally, if you answer the phone, people will ring you. It may ask yourself, are you the right person for them to call, or were you the easiest person for them to call? When we look at employment, you need to set up a system that allows staff to think for themselves once they have the skill set and the resources to do so. So if you're always answering people's questions, hey, I don't have to think for myself, Bernie knows everything, I'll just ring Bernie, he'll give me the answer, and I don't have to think for myself. So, and next thing you're having a conversation with Bernie who's saying, well, I'm completely overwhelmed, I've got too much on, and actually it's Bernie's fault for always answering the phone. So, there's a bit of vanity in being overly busy on other people's jobs. You're overly busy doing everything for everybody else. And there's vanity in that because potentially you believe you're the best person to do it, and you want to say yes. So really understanding what you're saying no to is critical for running this model. So there's a lot of information there. I would say that Simon Covey's, Simon Covey is an Irish politician. Stephen Covey's book is the best resource, I would say, to look at. It's about the 7 habits of highly effective people, and he does quite a lot on this prioritize on a daily basis on these quadrants. And he's probably best, I'd say that's probably his best known work, is this prioritization. So certainly look that up, delve into this, it's really valuable. What I would say to all of you, if you've got whiteboards in your offices and your planners, you would triage every single task through this matrix first before it ever enters your planner, before it ever enters your weekly task list. You should reflect on, is this important and is this urgent? And if it's not important and not urgent, it should never make it into your diary, your calendar, etc. when we're talking about business. Okay, so just in summary, we spoke about the golden circle. We said, why would you want to do time management? So we looked at the why, how, and what. The why was looking at, why would we invest in this? What's in it for you? What's in it? Why would I change behavior? How can I make this stuff stick? What's going to remind me to keep doing this? Get really clear about your why. The day you understand why time is important to you is the day you will become much more savvy at managing your time, at triaging your and prioritizing your tasks so that you're not wasting time, getting that sense of achievement, a positive self. Other people want to be part, success is very attractive. Other people want to be part of it. How are you going to do that? By effective time management. I've mentioned already, it's a learnable skill set. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And, what are the kind of things you can use? I discussed the macro concept of time, which is the discounted planner, and daily prioritization. They are just 2 tactics that you can use on that journey. I certainly have the daily prioritization of those quadrants on my phone as an app. I also use the planner. I talk a lot about the planner, so I feel obliged to use the planner, and I find it very useful. It's a conversation tool, and I'm always looking, I would say, for different ways of explaining time. So find the system that works for you, but certainly the more interesting you can make the planner, the more information you can put in it. It's a great way to help engage your employees to be better. It's a great way for your family to see that you're making a great effort with time. And it's looking at it, and it's imparting a really positive work ethic to your family, to your staff members, because you're being productive. Your work ethic is excellent. You're not chasing long hours, you're chasing productive hours, effectively productive hours, and that's very attractive. So that's my talk for today, based on that, the golden circle of time. And thank you very much. I'm sure Bernie will catch me with a question or two.
Well done. Thanks very much, Nola. Great presentation once again. if anybody has any questions, please pop those in the bottom in the chat there, and you can type those and send them through. I know, Nolag, when you came out to Australia and you presented some of this information in February last year, when you came out and spoke at the Australian Dairy Conference, we took Nolag around to some regions, and next time she comes out, we're going to go down to Tasmania. We haven't been there yet. One of the things that one of the participants who participated in the workshop went home and did is they used that wall planner. And the husband who was running, he's running mainly the daily operations of the business, actually started to use it. Kylie was telling me about this, one of her farmers over in South Australia. And she said it was one of the most effective things that they have transitioned into their business, and it just changed the way that they think. Because once they took their time out for themselves to go away from the business, if it was a weekend or whatever, however long the time was, they could plan for it. And you can always find an excuse why you can't go away, as you said, but because it was planned for, everyone in the team was on board with it. They knew it was coming up, and that was dedicated time away. It just made a significant change. So, and he apparently still talks about it today. So that was fantastic. Look, are there any questions at all from anybody who is listening? For Nolag? How do you actually get, if you're not getting buy-in, Nolag, how do you get buy-in to when people have been intuitive in their farming for quite a long time, and now you're starting to formalise some of that decision-making and planning? How do you take somebody on the journey?
It's a great question, Bernie. And what we find is, you know, when I go into companies that are transitioning from maybe small operations in terms of people and getting a bit larger, you've got to start putting structure in place. And that can really grate, particularly with the owner who's a well-oiled machine at doing it their own way and not necessarily expressing that very well because they've always done it that way. So getting buy-in is often most difficult with the person who's been there longest. So it's often most difficult with the business owner. And it's really about, always when we're looking for buy-in, it's about understanding how that person thinks. So if you want to change, if you want to get somebody to really engage in what you're speaking about, it will be reflecting on, well, who am I speaking to and what have they to gain from this? So if you're asking somebody to change behavior, the human race is hugely adaptable and hugely capable of change. That's why we're the king of the chain. But individuals resist change, and you have to give them reasonable incentive for that to happen. So it's really about understanding how to communicate with that person to get them to buy into it. In terms of your staff members, you know, we can always enforce it because this is what we do around here, and it's kind of the stick. But it does work, you know, and you shouldn't be afraid of doing that, because if it's your business, in terms of accountability, you should be setting standards, you should be engaging. What I have found is, in terms of the farming groups, it's a little bit like what you said. You've got one farmer who does it and turns around and says, this works really well. And so we've got that peer-to-peer conversation where I respect you as a farmer and you've started to engage in this time management and it's working really well. So, well, look, if Bernie likes it and I respect Bernie's operation, I might give it a go. So I would certainly find people who have resisted in the first place. And it's often, you know, a life partner who's saying, listen, this isn't good enough. You know, I do these talks, and I would often say, if you're a partnership, you know, even business partnership or life partnership, don't sit beside each other, because this can get uncomfortable, you know. And I'd often have people elbowing, going, I told you, because one of the things in time management is the ability to make yourself obsolete. And of course, if you're a partner in the business, maybe a wife or children or husband whose partner is working all the time, well then it's very difficult to, you know, it's frustrating and you want them to listen. It just popped into my head there. One of a farmer I know well in Ireland came up to me and he said he couldn't get his wife out of the milking parlour. She always milks the cows, and it was making it difficult to bring new staff in. And he spoke to me last July. Now, unfortunately, we've had COVID, so that's kind of scuppered things a little bit. But he said, how am I going to change her behaviour? And I said, you need to give her sufficient incentive to change her behaviour, but do it in give her time to get her head around this. And through just chatting to him, he went, oh my God, she loves tennis. And I said, right, this was July, and I said, the following year, which is June, take her to Wimbledon. That's her carrot. Take her to Wimbledon to see tennis. She's got a year to get her head around it. She's got a year to understand that she cannot go to tennis and milk the cows. She can't go to Wimbledon and milk the cows. So she, a system has to be put in place that allows her to remove herself from the business and to enjoy Wimbledon and all of that without feeling what's going on behind me. What have I left behind? Are the cows crying without me? Are the cows unproductive without me? And so and that's about using the language and tapping into somebody's motivations to help them move on that journey. What I have found with the planner is people seem to really buy into the fact that you are picturing time. So we use the colors, and we use colors because colors are easier to interpret. If I write a lot of stuff, it's cognitively impairing. My brain has to stop and work. So if you think of a plane, they've got digital dials. You think how they've got analog. You think how advanced plane technology is, and they still have all these dials that are like clock faces. It's because that's easier for the human brain. Our brains can interpret pictures faster than we can interpret words. A picture paints 1,000 words. So what I found is that the representing time as a picture has really hit home with many, many farmers. And we talk about making it as easy as possible for people to get that information. And a lot of people say, well, we're moving towards a paperless society. We're not, because if you want children to learn how to read and write, you have to have pencil and paper. So we'll never truly get rid of the pencil. It has to be used to teach people how to read and write. So people do respond well to that physical planner on the wall, just walking in, looking at it and going, all right, okay, I forgot that next week we've got the contractor coming in. I better make sure that the gates are open, the wires are down, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's demonstrating what's in it for me. Why would I do this? What's the benefit for it?
Absolutely. And that's why we would always come back to the why. Why? Why do you want to do this? Why would you even sit down after a long day of work and tune into to a DA webinar to learn something? Why are you doing it? And the people who are here obviously have perked up and thought, well, I want to listen to this for whatever reason. So that they're beginning to listen to their why. And unfortunately, when people, you talk about how do you get people who are resisting, it's often negative stuff that gets people to change. My children don't want to come into farming. I had an accident because I was so stressed and overworked, and now I don't want to go back to that place again. And I'm saying, be proactive, don't be reactive. Learning time management because you had an injury, because something negative has happened on the farm, that's fad. You spend enough of your time working, you have enough of yourself invested in the business. Be proactive and get what you can, enjoy it, really, really enjoy it. We spend so much time working, wouldn't it be absolutely wonderful to enjoy it? And one of the ways of enjoying something, you can enjoy something that's extremely boring and tedious because you've completed it and you've achieved it. So actually using your time effectively is a great way to get value out of your business and to feel that you've had a meaningful and worthwhile week or life in general.
Kylie has made a comment there as well, starting to use the plan around the next staff meeting, sit around the table and just start working through it, just make a start to progress. And it's a great tool of communication. Thanks.
Super. Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you very much, Nolag. For everybody participating, if you could just jump on the chat there now and click on the link to review how you thought today's session went. That'd be much appreciated. We collect that information. Nolag, thank you very much for taking the time out of your early morning over there in Ireland. And thank you very much for everybody who is taking their afternoon or evening out to participate in today. Really appreciate it. And Nolag, you mentioned 2 books here tonight, but you've also produced your own book or co-written your own.
Thank you.
Opportunity to give a little plug.
Well, thank you very much. It's currently available on Amazon through Kindle through Amazon in Australia, but I have spoken to the publishers and they will have physical copies available in the next 10 days, hopefully in Australia. It's called Advanced Leader Coaching. And it's really about understanding leadership and the kind of questions you need to ask to develop the leaders in your team or to develop yourself. I did it with a colleague of mine, a professor in multi-unit leadership, so quite relevant to any of the larger farms that are working from a multi-unit perspective. He will be an absolute specialist in that area. From a hospitality perspective, but we all need to invest in our brand. We all need to lead ourselves, etc. So yeah, that's Advanced Leader Coaching. Thank you very much for the plug.